The sirens screamed, an unsettling harmony of panic and urgency, echoing across the steel-clad city of New Horizon. Commander Elena Drake watched from the control tower as the massive shadow of the alien warship, Phalanx, swallowed the sun. Her breath was steady, but her mind raced. Every instinct in her battle-hardened body screamed that this was the end, yet she stood unmoving, her gaze fixed on the colossal vessel hovering ominously above. "Incoming transmission, Commander!" A voice crackled through her earpiece. It was Lieutenant Marcus Hale, his usual sarcasm absent, replaced by a tone Elena had rarely heard from him: fear. "Patch it through," she ordered, her voice as calm as the surface of a frozen lake. The screen before her flickered, then steadied, revealing the alien commander, a towering, reptilian figure draped in shimmering armor, its eyes glowing with cold malice. "Humans!" the alien hissed, its voice a low, rumbling growl. "Your resistance is futile. Surrender now, or be obliterated." The threat hung in the air, a dark cloud over the city's battered defenses. Elena felt the weight of every life in New Horizon pressing down on her shoulders, but she refused to bend. "We don't surrender," she replied, her voice firm. "Not today, not ever." The alien's eyes narrowed, the glow intensifying. "Then prepare for your annihilation." The screen went dark, and for a moment, silence reigned. Elena clenched her fists, the cool metal of her command console grounding her in the present. There was no time for fear, no room for hesitation. "Marcus, gather the team. We're launching a preemptive strike," she commanded, her voice slicing through the stillness. Marcus's reply was immediate. "Already on it, Commander. We're going to give them a fight they won't forget." Elena allowed herself a brief smile. Marcus was right. They might be outmatched in technology and numbers, but humans had always thrived in the face of impossible odds. That was their strength, their unyielding spirit. As the command center buzzed with activity, Elena's mind churned through possibilities, strategies, and risks. The Phalanx was a fortress, its shields impenetrable by conventional means. But Elena wasn't thinking conventionally. They needed an edge, something unexpected. Her eyes fell on the tactical map, and an idea began to form, a risky, desperate plan, but it might just be their only chance. "Marcus, I need EMP missiles prepped and ready," she ordered, her voice low and urgent. "We're going to target their shields." "Understood. But if this doesn't work," Marcus began, but Elena cut him off. "It will work," she insisted, though the doubt gnawed at the edges of her resolve. It had to work. Minutes later, the strike team assembled in the launch bay, a grim determination etched on every face. Elena stood before them, her gaze steady, her voice unwavering. "We're up against something we've never seen before," she began, her words clear and direct. "But remember who we are. We're the last line of defense. We're the shield between them and Earth." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "We fight not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. And we will make them remember that humans don't break." A murmur of agreement rippled through the ranks, a spark of hope igniting in their eyes. As they boarded their ships, Elena turned her gaze skyward, the shadow of the Phalanx still looming, an ever-present reminder of what was at stake. But shadows could be broken by the light, and Elena Drake was ready to strike. The silence of space shattered as the first wave of EMP missiles streaked toward the alien warship, Phalanx, their trails of light cutting through the darkness. Commander Elena Drake watched the monitors intently, her knuckles white as she gripped the edge of the console. The tension in the command center was palpable, every second dragging out like an eternity. "Impact in 3, 2, 1. Marcus Hale's voice rang out, steady but laced with the same apprehension that gripped them all. The missiles struck with blinding flashes, and for a brief, electrifying moment, the Phalanx's shields flickered and collapsed. Cheers erupted around Elena, but she remained silent, eyes narrowed at the screen. The enemy ship, colossal and imposing, seemed to shudder as its defenses faltered. But Elena knew better than to celebrate too soon. "Prepare for countermeasures," she barked, her voice cutting through the momentary euphoria. As if in response to her command, the phalanx retaliated with a fury unlike anything they had faced before. Blasts of energy surged from its hull, arcing through space with lethal precision. One by one, the human ships were caught in the crossfire, their shields straining under the onslaught. "Shields holding at 60%, no, 40%. Marcus reported, his fingers flying over the controls, trying to keep up with the escalating situation. Elena's mind raced, calculating their next move. They had bought themselves a momentary advantage, but the phalanx was adapting too quickly. If they didn't act fast, their fleet would be decimated. Her gaze flicked to the tactical map, searching for any possible escape route, but there was no time for retreat. Not now. "Target their propulsion system," she ordered, her voice cold and precise. "We need to cripple their mobility." Marcus nodded, relaying the command to the fleet. "Redirecting fire to the propulsion. Let's hope this slows them down." The next volley of missiles launched, streaking toward the alien ship's engines. Elena held her breath as the missiles found their marks, detonating with powerful bursts of light. The phalanx lurched, its movement becoming erratic as its propulsion systems faltered. But even as the ship slowed, it unleashed a barrage of firepower, determined to take as many human ships with it as possible. "Brace for impact!" Elena shouted as the alien warship fired a concentrated beam directly at their command vessel. The ship shuddered violently, alarms blaring as systems overloaded. Sparks flew from damaged consoles, and the lights flickered ominously. "We can't sustain another hit like that," Marcus warned, his voice strained but focused. Elena knew he was right. Their shields were failing, and the phalanx wasn't letting up. But surrender wasn't an option. Not with so much at stake. "Divert all power to weapons," she commanded, her decision final. "We're going all in." Marcus hesitated for a fraction of a second, then nodded. "You heard the commander. Divert all power!" The ship's lights dimmed as power was rerouted, the hum of the engines growing quieter. The next volley of missiles fired, their trails lighting up the darkness as they hurtled toward the phalanx. This was their last shot, their final chance to turn the tide. As the missiles closed in on the alien ship, Elena felt a strange calm wash over her. Win or lose, they had given everything. Her gaze remained fixed on the screen, watching as the missiles struck home, engulfing the phalanx in a massive explosion. For a moment, there was nothing but silence, the void of space reclaiming its stillness. Then, the cheers broke out once more, this time tempered by exhaustion and the weight of what had just transpired. Elena exhaled slowly, the tension finally releasing its grip on her. But the battle was far from over. The phalanx might be crippled, but it wasn't defeated. And she knew that the real fight was just beginning. A blinding light filled the viewscreen as the phalanx erupted in a violent explosion, its flames a testament to the ferocity of the battle. But even as debris from the alien warship drifted through the void, a deep rumble shook the command vessel, pulling Commander Elena Drake's attention to the rapidly flickering warning lights across the control panel. "Damage report, now!" Elena's voice was sharp, cutting through the tension that hung in the air like a suffocating fog. Lieutenant Marcus Hale's hands flew over the console, his brow furrowed with concentration. "Primary systems are failing, engines, life support, weapons. We're dead in the water, Commander." Elena's heart sank, but she forced herself to remain composed. Panic would only lead to mistakes, and mistakes were something they could no longer afford. She scanned the tactical display, her mind racing for a solution. They had crippled the phalanx, but the cost had been steep. Their ship was on the verge of collapse, and the enemy's remnants were still out there, lurking in the darkness. "We need to get those systems back online," she said, her tone commanding but laced with an urgency that couldn't be ignored. "And we need to do it before they realize we're vulnerable." As if in answer to her fears, the proximity alarms blared, signaling the approach of unidentified vessels. The remnants of the phalanx fleet were closing in, like vultures drawn to a dying beast. The odds, already slim, now felt insurmountable. "Incoming enemy ships!" Marcus announced, his voice tight with tension. "They're moving in fast." Elena's mind raced, the situation spiraling further out of control with every passing second. They were outgunned, outmaneuvered, and now, potentially out of time. But surrender wasn't in her nature. She had one final card to play, a risky maneuver that might just buy them the time they needed. "Prepared to engage emergency thrusters," she ordered, her decision made. "We're going to descend into the debris field." Marcus blinked, taken aback by the audacity of the plan. "The debris field? That's a death trap." "It's our only chance," Elena replied, steel in her voice. "We'll use the wreckage as cover. It's a long shot, but it's better than waiting here to die." With no time to argue, Marcus nodded, his fingers activating the emergency thrusters. The ship groaned in protest as it lurched forward, diving into the field of twisted metal and burning wreckage that had once been the phalanx. The debris scraped against the hull, the sound reverberating through the command center like nails on a chalkboard. As they plunged deeper into the wreckage, the enemy ships followed, their sensors scanning the chaos for any sign of their prey. Elena watched the tactical display, every muscle in her body coiled like a spring. They needed to stay hidden, just long enough to reroute power and get their systems back online. "Marcus, how long until we're operational?" she asked, her voice tight with the strain of the situation. "Working on it, but I need more time," he replied, his focus unbroken. "We're almost there." The enemy ships crept closer, their shadowy forms cutting through the wreckage like silent predators. Elena's breath caught in her throat as she saw one of them veer directly toward their position. They were seconds away from being discovered, and once they were, there would be no escape. "Now, Marcus!" she urged, her voice barely above a whisper. A sudden hum filled the command center as the lights flickered back to life, and the ship's systems roared back online. Elena's eyes narrowed with determination. "Target the lead ship and fire at will," she commanded, her voice a lethal edge. The ship's cannons blazed to life, sending a volley of missiles toward the enemy. The first enemy vessel erupted into flames, its wreckage scattering among the debris. The other ships hesitated, giving Elena the moment she needed. "Full power to engines," she ordered. "We're getting out of here." The ship surged forward, tearing through the debris field as the remaining enemy vessels scrambled to react. Elena's heart pounded in her chest, but she kept her focus sharp. The battle wasn't over, but they had survived this round. As they cleared the wreckage, the stars stretched out before them, cold, distant, and full of peril. Elena knew they had only delayed the inevitable. But for now, they were alive, and that was enough. The ship shuddered violently as it cleared the debris field, the remnants of the alien warship Phalanx behind them. But Commander Elena Drake had no time to savor their narrow escape. The enemy fleet was still in pursuit, and their damaged ship was barely holding together. The situation was dire, and every second counted. "Status report," Elena demanded, her voice cutting through the frantic activity on the bridge. Lieutenant Marcus Hale, drenched in sweat, kept his focus on the flickering monitors. "Engines are at 30%. Shields are regenerating, but we won't last in a direct confrontation. We're running on fumes, Commander." Elena's jaw tightened. The enemy ships were closing in fast, their sleek forms relentless in their pursuit. The tactical display showed their dire situation with brutal clarity. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and running out of options. "Can we make it to the jump point?" she asked, knowing the answer but needing to hear it anyway. Marcus shook his head grimly. "Not without drawing fire. They'll tear us apart before we get halfway there." A heavy silence fell over the bridge, the weight of their impending doom pressing down on everyone. Elena's mind raced, searching for a solution, a way out that didn't involve their annihilation. They needed a miracle, something that could turn the tide in their favor. And then it hit her, a plan as risky as it was desperate. "Marcus, what's the status of the ship's reactor?" Elena asked, her tone sharp with purpose. Marcus hesitated, sensing where she was going. "It's unstable, but still operational." "What are you thinking?" "We overload it," Elena replied, her eyes narrowing with determination. "Set it to go critical." We'll jettison the reactor and use it as a decoy. When they go after it, we make a break for the jump point. The bridge fell silent as her words sank in. It was a dangerous gambit, one that could either save them or doom them all. But it was the only chance they had left. Marcus met her gaze, his expression grim but resolute. It's a hell of a plan, Commander. I'll get it done. As Marcus worked, Elena addressed the crew, her voice steady. Listen up, everyone. We're about to execute a high-risk maneuver. If we pull this off, we might just live to see another day. Stay sharp and trust in your training. We're not going down without a fight. The crew nodded, their expressions a mix of fear and determination. They were tired, battered, but they still had fight left in them. And that was enough. Reactor is set to overload, Marcus reported, his voice tight with tension. We've got less than 2 minutes before it blows. Jettison the reactor and engage evasive maneuvers, Elena ordered, her heart pounding in her chest. The ship shuddered as the reactor was released into space, drifting away from them like a glowing beacon of destruction. As expected, the enemy ships locked onto the reactor, believing it to be their target. Now, full speed to the jump point, Elena commanded, the tension in her voice mirrored by the frantic activity on the bridge. The ship lurched forward, engines straining as they pushed toward the distant jump point. Behind them, the reactor detonated in a blinding flash, sending shockwaves through space and engulfing the enemy ships in a catastrophic blast. Elena didn't look back. Her focus was solely on the jump point, the one path to survival. The ship hurtled forward, the stars stretching into streaks of light as they closed in on their escape. Almost there, Marcus murmured, his voice barely audible over the roar of the engines. The ship crossed the threshold, the jump drive activating in a brilliant burst of energy. In an instant they were gone, leaving the chaos and destruction behind. Elena exhaled, the tension draining from her body. They had done it. Against all odds, they had survived. But as she stared into the vast expanse of space ahead, she knew this was just the beginning. The war was far from over, and they still had battles left to fight. But for now, they were alive, and that was victory enough.